Hello, everyone. Welcome to Midway Gaming. I'm Nick. On the other side of the comms, of course, Justin, providing audio, gameplay, and his brand of commentary wherever necessary. So, fuck, not Lightfall. It's left such a deep impression in our minds that I can't say anything that's not Lightfall. Final Shape. Final Shape. That's a thing. It's finally released, and yeah, honestly, this is the first time where we've actually intentionally delayed this particular week's video because stuff just kind of kept happening intentionally, man. From the expansion coming out Tuesday to me playing it, to me convincing Justin to play it, to us playing it, to us finishing it, to us watching the raid. Well, me watching the raid, watching the absolute chaos that ensued from the raid, and seeing everything happen, as well as getting our hands on Prismatic. I'm more or less done grinding for it. I've got like half or less than half the fragments to go through. Other than that, I basically got it. And yeah, everything is said and done. We've also both stuck our stakes in the witness, so we're technically beyond the point of the final shape. But do not worry, we're not going to cover any spoilers for the final mission, what happens, etc., etc. Anything we talk about, like there might be some spoilers depending on how you do it, but there's not going to be any like major story spoilers. Like any of the big plot beats we're going to avoid and stuff like that. If we talk about anything, it's going to be minor and very much we already knew from the trailers and stuff like that. For example, the Lucent Brood is here. I know, shocking. We already knew because Savathun was here, so again, not much of a spoiler. If we talk about stuff, it's going to be on that level.
Yeah, like in,
So
in certain regards, it kind of makes sense that if we're going to go in the Traveler because we need to save the light, it kind of makes sense that Sabathun joins in on it because she does have a stake in the whole light thing.
yeah,
So it makes
and
sense that she
the
goes
universe.
and, kind of secures her what she has.
Yeah, she's very much the Loki of Destiny in that she will both help you and hurt you depending on the question of does this help her in any way. As
Does
long
the
as she
activity
survives,
revolve around you going and killing one of her minions who just so happens to have a sword that'll help you out? Yes. Well, that's
yes,
her way of loving you.
that's the highest way of loving you. In fact, she even this is a bit of I don't know. Will we consider the radio transmissions we get on the radio to be spoilers? Because we're gonna reference the
Kind
one from
of.
Savathun. Kind of. Okay.
Kind
I'll,
of.
I'll just say. I'll just say this then. She basically says that don't be too offended by the Lucent Brood attempting to kill you. Just think of it as their form of affection, which for the Hive, yeah, that checks. So you'll be fine. But anyways, so yeah, let's just carry on then, shall we? So what do we want to start with? Prismatic or the destination? Your pick.
I'd say with the destination because you don't get prismatic right away.
Destination it is then. So the destination is interesting to say the least. Surreal is, I don't know, depending on where you are. Like I definitely could see the surreal inspiration. I just am so desensitized to the like I play some games with some pretty crazy environments, so I'm more desensitized to the craziness than perhaps some people, but I can certainly see the surrealness to it. That whole guardian heaven and hell thing, yeah, I can definitely see it. It definitely feels like that in many ways. It's a very linear environment. So basically what's going to happen when you start off, you're going to start at one end of the traveler, which is near the portal, and the whole campaign is you fighting your way to the monolith of the witness. What happens at the monolith? I ain't telling you. So you're gonna have to find out. But overall, and what happens on the way, I'm not telling you. You're gonna have to find that out too. But yeah, it's an interesting journey. Some great character moments all around. You're with Crow, Ikora, Zavala, and of course Cade. And you're having just an interesting it's very much it feels genuine. Like there's some very good character moments from everyone. I'm going to echo the sentiment everyone's saying, in that I am deeply saddened by the fact Lance Reddick is not here to finish this off with us. He's been
Yes.
in this game since, in fact, he's been in this game since day one as the voice actor for Zavala. So to see him not be able to finish off the 10-year saga with us, it's unfortunate. It really is. But that's what it is, I suppose. That said, the person that got to fill him in, Keith David, ext- it is Keith David. I don't know, misquoting my
Yes, I
actor.
believe it's
He's-
his name. He's Keith David.
Okay, good. Just a second. I know so many actors these days. Um, that it has a very it hits different. I'm gonna say that hearing Keith David behind Zavala instead of Lance Reddick hits different. Lance had more of this sagely feel to him, like this wise commander that you listen to. When Keith David speaks as Zavala, it feels more like a battle general, and I'm just like, yes, sir, we're doing this, sir. I
No,
think I'm just here.
though I'll say this from my experience listening to him, there are some serious moments where he does sound very close to Lance Reddick's Zavala.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it
there
almost feels
are
like he's doing it in
moments
verse.
where it sounds like the it sounds like Lance Reddick, but it sounds more monotone in certain regards. Like it sounds more like it's fitting the situation almost.
Yeah, it almost like that's a good point to kind of go off of. This voice, like this version of a voice for Zavala, almost fits with everything that we know he's now been through and the current state of things. Like Keith David's voice adds a much more almost, I guess the word would be like burdened Zavala. Like this is a Zavala that feels far more like, I don't want to say old because that's not what I'm going for. He feels far more traumatized, perhaps. Like this is a man who's seen shit, and you can hear it. So I think that's a good, like, he brings that energy to Zavala versus, like I said, Lance Reddick's, which was more wise and sage. Which again, I would have loved hearing how Lance Reddick would have portrayed this. Honestly, like I said, sad to hear he's not with us because he's unfortunately gone. But again, we have Keith David, and he does a banger of a job. And like I said, it fits with the tone, even if I am gonna have to get used to hearing it. But like I said, I swear to God, I hear the Arbiter sometimes. I swear to Traveler, I hear it sometimes, and I think I'm hearing the Arbiter.
Demon.
Honestly, just waiting for it to go demon, and I'm like, yep, that's it. But forgive my clock in the background. You might hear it's pretty late when we're recording. It's literally midnight, but
Yep.
where we are on the East Coast anyway. So, or on the Eastern Seaboard anyway, or Eastern Standard Time. Excuse me. But anyways, more on the destination itself, though. Like I said, it's extremely linear. Um, Fun fact: the power level is completely turned off for the whole destination, kind of like it was in Niamuna. So the whole destination has its power level turned off. So don't bother trying to over level the enemies. You won't. Another fun fact is for the campaign itself. Fun fact: regardless of whether you choose legendary or basic, yeah, let's go with basic to describe it. Whether the legendary or the regular version of the campaign, your power level will also be turned off both ways. And it's not like maximum tower power level like they were doing in Lightfall. It is literally your power level is turned off. Or I think that, well, let me check. Let me check. Its power level's turned off, or is it? No, my brain is having a
I
moment.
think it's
Excuse me.
disabled.
Yeah, no, your power level is disabled. And then in legendary, yeah, your power level is also disabled. So you're probably thinking, wait a minute, then what's so different between legendary and basic? Well, in legendary, the enemies have a lot more modifiers on them. So basically, in the version of the campaign that's just basic, there are no modifiers. It's just your power level's disabled, so everything hits like a truck. But in legendary, not only do they hit like a truck, but you also have legendary modifier, because that's a modifier in itself these days, which makes the enemies both heavily shielded and highly aggressive, which means they want you dead badly. Oh yeah, and they also appear in much greater numbers, so have fun with that. Chaff, which basically means your radar is disabled, so if you're running with an extra team, you're gonna have to actually look around to find them, so gonna have to keep your head on a swivel. As the same thing with enemies. Galvanized, so the enemies themselves are more chunky with a health bar, more difficult to stun, and of course multiplicity, which means the greater fire team which means the greater enemies you have. And this is more to offset the fact that depending on if you're running with a team or not will depend on the strength of the enemies. This is just there to make sure that if you're running by yourself, it doesn't feel like you're going to get your teeth kicked in. Hopefully. And then, of course, the final one, which is Epitaph, which is taken combatants generate blight geysers when defeated, just for flavor. And that's only on mission 1. So that's why, despite both of them being power level disabled, the legendary is still going to be hard. That said, I have heard from people who've played the full legendary campaign, because I played it fully on basic just for the sake of playing it generally. That the legendary campaign is actually fully doable by yourself regardless. The only problem is the last mission, for reasons I won't mention, for spoiler reasons, but just let it be known that the legendary campaign is pretty easy to do if you know what you're doing, up until the last mission where, yeah, you really gotta know your stuff. But yeah, that's basically the campaign in a nutshell. I won't go over all the UI changes from the UI to the actual game UI and stuff like that. Their new leveling system, which is now rated almost like a Halo difference with skulls, which I don't know.
I
I
mean,
prefer the
like,
level power before. That was at least more specific.
eh,
I am now 4 skull difficulty. What the frick does 4 skull difficulty mean?
yes.
Um, but that's just me being nitpicky. But I won't go over all that because that's the whole thing in itself. But let it be known that there's a massive UI change across the board from both how your guardian is to both also the UI for how mission selecting works. But again, not a big detail, so we'll kind of glaze over that. Moving on to Prismatic. I think I'll let you talk about this mostly, Justin, for the first half anyway, considering you have it up and you can kind of show people what
So,
to do, at least from the hunter's perspective.
so basically, here's how Prismatic works. Prismatic in the campaign, you actually do get introduced to it, and how it works is you're basically playing as if it's a normal subclass, only you have the option, very limited options, but the option to mix and match different abilities and some different aspects and fragments from the different main subclasses. A big buff that makes it very drawing to use Prismatic is the fact that there is both a light and a dark meter that you need to fill in order to activate Prismatic. Once activated, you get a massive boost to your
You mean
overall.
transcendence, not prismatic.
No matter what, when you activate it, you get a boost to your overall regeneration, to your abilities, damage, and I believe, what was it, the overall output that you can get with it? Like, I don't know.
If memory serves, it's DR. So it's for D. So you get boosted damage resistance. You get boosted damage. So basically, it's kind of weird how it works. Everything kind of also gets a prismatic element tied to it as well. It's not a specific element, but it is kind of a thing in the campaign. There are some enemies in the campaign you're going to see that are only able to be damaged, at least first off, if you hit them with prismatic. Don't worry though, it's easy to charge your bar. Just hit them and you'll get tons of energy for both bars, so it's not too hard. Plus, there's pools of prismatic energy running around, so
Yes.
you can just kind of stand negative on
Note,
energy.
this is important for the campaign. If you do not have Prismatic equipped, do not bother shooting the Prismatic
Blowy guys.
shielded enemies because you will not gain any Prismatic charge. You can only gain Prismatic charge if you have Prismatic equipped. I made sure to figure this out myself. If you want to go and take out those guys, which you have to in the campaign, but you don't want to be using Prismatic, then you have to go and find the pools, sit in it for a few seconds, and then you'll be able to activate it. Note that you can't just kind of go and fill up your meter and then run away, because if you do, after a few seconds, it'll just go back down to 0 as if you had no charge at all. So you kind of have to run over to the pool, charge it, and then you might be able to get a few feet away before you have to activate it. But
That's good.
nevertheless, when you activate it, you get this nice, cool little animation that every single class does. and you go and light up like a big bright light in the day and night sky. And in the case of the
Like,
hunters, you get I think this is the same for all of the classes. You get a grenade that goes and switches back and forth between solar and stasis, and it recharges fairly quickly, even more so with the kind of loadout that I have. But
this one.
it's a
This,
special. What?
no, I was gonna say this is the part where I was gonna kind of chime in for a second. It is different for the classes. So what you get, depending on what your class is, kind of again building off your thing you said, it basically for prismatic you have one melee from each of your melees from each of the elements, and then one grenade from each of your elemental keys. And your transcendent grenade, which you get after filling up the bar, which is a transcendent state, which again, as Justin explained, that is also variable depending on what class you are. So us warlock, well, as he says, hunters get solar and stasis versus us warlocks would get void and stasis. So it'll not only slow things with the stasis, but it will also suppress them as well and deal damage, and I think also draw them in. But I've yet to really test that. But anyways,
Yes. Another thing that I need to note, because this is actually very important. Um, for hunters, you start off with these two aspects right here. You ask the Winter's Shroud and what was it? Stylus Executioner. These two aspects are actually a very good combination, as you are able to constantly slow and freeze enemies as you do, and you can dodge and then eliminate an enemy and gain invisibility. And then if you eliminate an enemy with your powered melee attack, you can also go invisible. So it is very much a solid combination between both void and stasis. And that's just one of the like default combinations that you start out with. There are a multitude of other combinations that you can mix and match with together for a variety of different abilities, sets, different buffs and debuffs that you can apply to yourself and enemies. And that's one of the biggest draws that makes Prismatic very useful, is that it does at least organize and set you up to be able to use a lot of the more common buffs related to each subclass.
that's the thing, right? Like again, chiming off what you said, for the aspects, what basically Prismatic does is it'll give you like an aspect from each of your elemental subclasses plus one extra one, I think, for one of the classes. Like for us, the Warlocks, but again, we're not talking about Titan because neither of us main Titan. But in the case of us Warlocks, we also have a new element for Solar, which is also part of the new Solar, which is also part of the Solar tree as well, called Helion, which is basically our Solar summonable as well. Like me, for example, I have the Weaver's Call for Strand, and I have the Helion for Solar. And actually, when you look in your ability bar, whether it's the melee, the grenade, or your aspects, it'll actually show you, if the element doesn't give it away, you're a newer player, what element that actually ability is associated with. So Helion, or you can probably show them in just your case, Justin, just go to over to anything. You can see a little basically tab on the side of the ability, and that'll indicate what element it's associated with. And again, in Prismatic, you get one ability for each of the elements. In the case of the melees and the grenades, they are all class specific. Same thing with aspects. So unlike in the base elements, so to speak, where everyone gets the same set of grenades. In this case, your melee, grenade, and aspects will all be variable depending on what class you are. So, for example, Justin has his set of grenades. In my case, I have a healing grenade for solar, storm grenade for arc, a cold snap grenade for stasis, and the threadling grenade for, well, strand.
This,
And
I
again,
will say, actually, real quick, is very, very noticeable for both Strand and Stasis, because both Strand and Stasis only have three types of grenades each, and they are class specific. They are each grenades that you start out with when you first play with those class elements. So it is 100% noticeable when you are playing with Prismatic that you are 100% tied to your class's specific abilities. So you do have to keep that in mind when going and designing your class, because you can easily be limited based off of what you have.
Yeah, like for example, I know the hunters after seeing people play with the hunter, like one of the grenade, like the grenade they have for stasis is actually the shackle grenade. Versus Justin, you have the grapple grenade, and I have the threadling grenade. So depending on what class you are, will depend on which of the three you get.
Yes.
That said, much like all the classes, your fragments are universal, so don't worry, you're not entirely pigeonholed into whatever class you are. You can still mess around with universal fragment set, which is actually pretty not large and also pretty interesting depending on what classes you are. Like one of them literally just allows you to what's a good one actually? Actually, we were talking about this one just before the show. The facet of mending, because apparently now they're all called facets in Prismatic. Facet of mending, which actually looks like a solar aspect you might be aware of, but I digress, or solar fragment. But anyways, it basically allows any grenade final blows you have, any grenades at all, when you have this fragment equipped to provide you with curing. And when you have transcendence, so your bars both used, that effect is increased. And you're actually going to see this kind of idea of if you are prismatic, then X is increased running across all the fragments. Because transcendence is a very big part of prismatic, and I can actually get more into that if you want, Justin, and kind of my own opinions of it if you want.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually having this thought last night, actually, where I was thinking, okay, does Prismatic feel too powerful? And my answer is actually no. And the reason is that I think it actually feels right, and it is just as powerful as the other classes. The only reason is because Prismatic is almost arguably easier to, despite being an advanced subclass, it is actually, funny enough, easier to build for and kind of get powerful, provided, like I said, you know the basic classes themselves and how elements work. Provided you know that, it's actually surprisingly easier to build for Prismatic than any other class, which means you're going to be stronger. The reason I say that is because of what Prismatic does. Prismatic, by its nature, as we've been kind of alluding to, freaking clock, might hear that, doesn't allow you to actually do any like pure set abilities. Like I said for the grenade, right? I only have threadling grenade, and I only have an aspect for strand that allows me to make more threadlings when I use my well. That is it. That is my strand loadout minus my needle for melee. So that's all I can really do for strands. So when it comes to like severing or suspending, I can't suspend in Prismatic as a warlock, period. And when it comes to severing, unless it's on a weapon, well, even for suspending as well, unless it's on a weapon like slice or something, I cannot do those either. So it very much feels like you are playing very much into your class, which does weaken you compared to actually playing that element itself, because you'll get the full variety spectrum of like you get everything. And that I think maybe where Bungie's leaning. Like base elements, everyone gets everything, but with Prismatic, you're leaning more into your class. This naturally makes you weaker because, for example, as a warlock, I can easily proc Devour in Prismatic using Void. Justin might not.
Nope.
Devour is very powerful. So how do you offset that lack of power depending on your class? Well, again, this is where the versatility comes in and where Transcendence comes in. Transcendence is basically there as a way to balance out the fact that you cannot do any particular element rather well. Like you cannot do any element in Prismatic particularly powerfully because you're using them as a set. And when you are when you use Transcendence, like I said, you get good DR, you get a boost to damage, which is pretty good. Like, and it also applies to your super too. So, also word of warning: don't pop your super then Transcendence. It does not work. I don't know why. Pop Transcendence then super if you're going to use it, because again, this also applies to your super. Your damage increases on your super. So yeah, you can do a lot of damage if you are Transcendent. But again, the only way to get Transcendence is to build that bar. Unlike everything else in your kit, it does not build passively. It must be built actively. You must use a Darkness ability or melee or weapon or whatever to build the Darkness side. And the same thing with the light side. There is a bit of a caveat here when it comes to kinetics, because kinetics actually allow you to fill both sides of the bar at once. And again, this is not stasis or strand, but this is pure just base kinetics that don't have any element affinity. I personally would not recommend that to be your primary loadout. I mean, I kind of run with it right now because it's fun, and I'm kind of running Cabal stuff at the moment because I'm just that kind of guy. But when it comes to actually like serious build crafting, I personally wouldn't recommend it because from what I've been able to gather, despite it actually, again, building both sides of the bar, it doesn't build it with nearly as much efficiency as a dedicated um, element assigned to that weapon, which I think is the reason because when you actually use a base kinetic, it'll take the amount allocated to one of the bars and slice it in two and just put it in both of the bars instead, and that's how base kinetics work, which, yes, allows you to fill both bars, but at a much slower rate. So what I would recommend going in for Prismatic is basically it boils down to this. The more colorful your ability bars and like weapons are, the better. The more diverse your kit is, the better. Because like again, my ability bar looks very colorful right now. Like I've got a solar super, an arc melee, a void um grenade. I've got a solar aspect, a strand aspect. I've got darkness based weapons. And basically, I'm using them to counterbalance each other, and Justin kind of has the reverse of what I'm going right
Well,
now.
right now I have the grapple grenade and the dodge that provides the radiance buff, but other than that, I have stasis. But for me, my normal loadout for prismatic is basically entirely stasis. I will just have light based weapons in my arsenal and mostly use the light based weaponry while I'm using gunplay and use my abilities in order to go and get pretty much most if not all of the darkness bar. Another thing that I have, which is, let me see here, um, yeah, facet of devotion. Defeating targets, uh, flex with or defeating targets with stasis or strand debuffs grants bonus transcendence energy, and that is one that I use, and that's a nice part that prismatic kind of offers, is that you very much can easily lean heavily into one class or another. Like if I wanted to, I can lean pretty heavily into arc, um,
You're gonna make me sound
solar.
stupid on my next point, then.
Well, no, like, but you can. It's just you got to keep in mind, like, you are limited in two facets. One, you are limited with both your grenades and abilities. So one loadout that might be extremely overpowered in the main subclass might not even be feasible nor possible with prismatic because you just don't have it. Sure, you can still lean into that element in prismatic, but it might overall not be as effective unless you are smart about how you do it.
And that's kind of bringing me to my second point, which is going to make this very awkward because I was about to say that is the very thing I would recommend you never do in Prismatic is lean into a single element because again, kind of like what Justin's saying, if you lean into a single element, yes, you might be able to pull some of the perks. Like for example, me, I could pull some of the abilities of Void, but I can't really do much suppressing or I can't really do much in the way of other aspects of Void. I can really only use Devour. So if you really want to run a pure loadout, you're better off just running that base subclass because again, not only then are you hampering your ability to build darkness because let's be honest, it's going to be harder to build darkness if you're leaning more heavily into one than the other, but also it is going to be you're not going to be able to draw the full extent of that element out, which again is very much what Bungie said themselves when they were talking about Prismatic, is that you're not going to be able to use a subclass to the fullest extent in Prismatic, or you're not going to be able to use an element to the fullest extent while in Prismatic. The power of Prismatic comes less in its ability to master one element and do like, and again, this is kind of where it comes down to where to do really good builds in one element requires you to heavily lean into the aspects of that element. So if I'm doing solar, I'm running a build that is igniting the entire arena like crazy. I am running something that might have a bit of healing on the side if I'm a support class, because that's a still viable build. I'm being sarcastic here. But you're leaning into the aspects of that element, and your exotics and supers and whatnot are tailored to that. Versus in Prismatic, which is the opposite. You are variety, and the more like the power of Prismatic is its variety. I can have Devour, I can have Shock, I can have all these things working in tandem, but I can't really do any of those things particularly well by themselves. The power comes from having a variety. Like, for example, my build right now, like I said, I have the Helion for solar, but I also have Weaver's Call on. So basically, when I pop my Rift for healing, yes, I'm also healing myself, but I'm also making a fleep ton of things to throw at other people, from my little fire mortar to like 3 little, stranglings that'll go out and destroy things for me. So I can clear an arena just by popping my Rift, which, not gonna lie, makes Rift far more useful these days. But it's things like that where it's the variety versus the singularity. So my best advice to anyone who wants to build for Prismatic: go for a general overview versus singular. Don't start leaning too much into one element, if at all, because overall, you won't be as strong in that element. If you want to play Void, just go Void. You want to do Strand, just do Strand, yada, yada, yada. Because again, these aspects, like the new super for, again, solar for Warlock and Transcendence, is also in the solar tree now. So if you want to really go super solar, just run solar. Like, that's the best advice I can give any would-be build crafters. But anyways, and like I said, Transcendence kind of offsets that fact of not having any one thing particularly powerful. Because Transcendence, like, long story short, is this: the more often you can proc Transcendence, you are going to be very powerful. If you can proc Transcendence constantly, yes, you're going to be extremely powerful. But that's the point. You're leaning into the variety versus the singularity. So, again, anyways, moving on.
Yep.
Unless you have any closing points.
Not really.
All right, then. Let's move on to the raid, then. This is partly where I'm going to sit back and say, oh boy, so where to begin?
They made
First
good
off,
on their promise.
they did make good on that promise. The 10th and final raid of possibly Destiny 2, unless something happens on Monday where they give us the what comes next buy doc, because you bet your bottom dollar I'm watching that. Might be the very last and very hardest raid of Destiny 2 history because oh yeah. Well, number one, let me just start off by saying congratulations to Parabellum. Sorry, that name just broke my brain for a second. Congratulations to Parabellum for winning World's First. Congratulations, round of applause for you guys. And also, congratulations for being the only team to actually finish it in any time that is not Dear God. Because, for those who don't know, let me just break down what happened during the raid. So, the raid ended up being not only extremely difficult, but actually broke the record for how much time it took to beat, even by Parabellum's time. That last record was actually held by Last Wish, the last infamous raid of Destiny's history, which also had archaic as flip mechanics, but we'll get to that. So, in Last Wish, it actually came out to a full time for first ever world clear of 18 hours. In the case of Parabellum, it was 18 hours and about 5 minutes. We broke the record by 5 whole minutes. Congratulations. Um, that said, I'm almost reluctant to what's the word here? Say that it took only 18 hours and 5 minutes, because here's the weird part about the whole situation. This is where the story gets kind of weird and funny, depending on how you look at it. Parabellum was actually, despite winning the raid, not actually one of the big raid teams streaming and stuff like that. They were actually not streaming anything while they were doing the raid. They were just doing it themselves, solo. Well, not, you get the point. So they were doing it offline. So it came as a shock to everyone when someone was announcing the raid was actually finished, when everyone was still on encounter 4 of 5. And they stayed on encounter 4 of 5 for the next 4 or 5 hours. So, like I said, I was actually watching Astacross at the time myself. I was actually watching his whole, well, most of it. I actually stopped near the end, but I watched basically of his new 30 something hour stream. I think it was like 34, 35 hours last I checked, but it's definitely more by the end. I watched 90% of it. And yeah, basically, the raid mechanics are not that hard to understand as far as I can tell in the first few encounters. But when you get to encounter 4, which has basically taken the place of the new vault from Last Wish because of just how freaking archaic, or how flippin' how freaking archaic the freaking the method of solving it is. So yeah, let's just say that it was a big mess to deal with, and but like, despite Parabellum only taking 18 hours and 5 minutes to beat, everyone else basically managed to finish it around over the 20 hour, like not even the 20 hour, like say 25, 24 hour mark at minimum. So I almost want to say Parabellum here was the exception, not the rule. Again, congratulations to them to finishing it at all, and
Mm.
for finishing it they did. But like I said, when you look at how everyone else handled it, like I said, I almost want to call them the exception, not the rule here, because just how long it took everyone else. And again, we're not talking like a small time here. We went from 18 hours to like 20 or 30 hours.
Yeah,
So,
people were going on and on for hours on end, and it did not look like anybody was gonna even get it.
honest to God, I won't lie. I literally fell asleep last night watching the stream. Woke up the next morning, still, like, my computer was still on, and they were still in the same freaking encounter. I went to bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning and woke up at around 6 or 7 in the morning, and they were still on encounter 4. So there you go. And the final boss was even harder. Honestly, I would have said that it probably would have taken the final boss, like raid teams, even longer to do the final boss if it didn't, I think, came out at some point, if memory serves, that Parabellum actually shared their how the method of beating the boss actually was. So I think they shared the method and that sped everyone up. But had they not choose to done that, because I think in the past some people have just chose to take the win and leave, so to speak, it probably would have taken everyone a lot freaking longer. So, like I said, it's yeah, congratulations to Bungie as well for giving us Last Wish too. Wish harder, I guess, because yeah, this raid was a doozy. Overall though, it looks fun. Once contest mode is over, I might consider doing it. I find it funny that Bungie put on YouTube, don't forget to do the Salvation's Edge raid, which is what it's called. If you're interested, because there's only like 24 hours left at the time when I saw that thing, and the entire comment section of that post on YouTube was just people looking at Bungie going, "Yeah, right," because
I don't
every
feel like putting myself through danger.
yeah, everyone who knew anything about the raid, either they were watching it or hearing about it from people who did, just looked at it and went, "Oh hell no! If we do it, it'll be after contest mode, and probably when the guides are out, because unlike Encounter 4, or not Encounter 5, I mean, which is the actual fight with the witness, you don't beat him. By the way, I think I can say that fairly calmly, because it'd be kind of weird if there was a 5th campaign mission where you fight the witness if you kill them in the raid. But that's all I'm gonna say. I don't actually know what happens when you beat him in the raid, because I didn't actually watch till the very, very end of that fight because of just how bloody long it took. But yeah, if it weren't for that, like I said, people like unmuted during the 5th and final fight with the witness. But during Encounter 4, everyone was literally going radio silent and either going full like silent audio or just covering their screams entirely. So even if you were watching the raid race, unless you were like trying to figure it out in your own head and maybe got lucky and figured it out yourself, yeah, nobody bloody knows outside of the raiders who did how the heck you do for like the fourth encounter. So definitely gonna wait till the guides come out. But yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the raid. Oh boy. So let's see. We covered the raids. We covered the encounter. Covered the. Did we cover the Pale Heart location yet? Did we? We
Not
kind of
not
did.
really. We glossed over a part of it, but not entirely.
All right. We'll just kind of cap things off with talking about the Pale Heart itself, and then our overall impressions about the expansion as a whole from just both of us.
Hmm.
The location as a whole, like I said, is surreal. One thing I am kind of irked about is because of the fact that it is very linear. The enemy density is very high, it feels at least higher, maybe because it is, but also because of the fact that, well, no, it's definitely is now I think about it, but also due to the fact that because of it's very linear, the areas are much more closed in compared to like the wide open areas of most areas, like for example, the throne world. So enemies are more boxed in. And because of that, the density you're going to fight is a lot thicker. Why am I making a big deal of this? Well, there's a lot of things you got to do in the Pale Heart pre and post campaign. I'm going to just say that much. And while some of it is indeed fighting these enemies, some of it isn't. Some of it is just going places. And all I'm going to say is it's very difficult to go anywhere in the Pale Heart without getting absolutely atomized because of just how many enemies there are. And remember, power level is disabled, so they hit hard. And they are everywhere. So, yeah, just anyone who's played Red Dead 1, you know the ending where they just gun down John Marston? Yeah, just picture that to your happening to your guardian every time you just go anywhere. You just get absolutely gunned down, and that is not even exaggerations. So that's my only gripe with it. Other than that, fun location, really nice, really beautiful. Personal note, soundtrack is absolutely stunning for this. Whoever did the composition, maybe it was Michael Salvatore when he was still at Bungie. Not sure exactly who did this one. Got to check. Because like I said, he got laid off, happened something
Hmm.
before Final Shape came out. So I'm not sure how much of this he worked on, but whoever did, congratulations. It's an absolutely gorgeous soundtrack, and I do enjoy good music. So my only gripe about the location. No, I'm not angry. You're angry. Let's see here. We covered that. Anything you want to add for the destination, Justin?
I will say this: it is very much a good thrill going through all the different areas, and see, like you've probably picked up on it by me being in this area, but you see bits and pieces of the outside world in the Pale Heart, and it is a bit of a thrill going through the different areas and seeing all the little hidden bits and pieces. And that's another thing of note, is that there's a lot of like hidden little details throughout the entirety of the campaign and more. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely take your time to go through it.
Oh yeah, I'm just waiting for the Lord Junkies, like other than myself, to get a hold of this because there's just so much to chew through.
Yeah.
I almost want to tell you guys, but like I said, we said this would be a no spoiler stream, and I'm not gonna lie on that. So we're moving on. So, final impressions about the DLC overall. Let's start off with you, Justin. What do you think?
I saw a little meme the other day going over all of Destiny's expansions, if all the expansions were like a personality or a person.
That's gotcha.
And it basically covers how like it pretty well. Um, Final Shape basically had to build up from Lightfall, and Lightfall did not set it very well, but Final Shape does very much give what like all the expectations you are thinking. Like it provides a very wonderful experience and a very satisfying ending.
I'll echo that. I definitely will. Um, yeah, pretty much the same thing. Like, I was watching a lot of people like kind of talking again. I more frequent the story circles of the Destiny 2 fan base, so I look at this from a more narrative perspective. Um, again, it's very much what you said, Justin. Coming out of bloody heck, coming out of Lightfall, there was a lot that had to be built up. There was a lot writing on Final Shape. Let's be real here. There was a lot writing on Final Shape, and I don't think it's any exaggeration when you look at like the state of Bungie currently overall. If you kind of know the kind of ins and outs of the current studio drama going on at the moment. If you know, you know. I won't cover it just because it's a whole video and a half. I think we did a bit of the video earlier, so look.
I'm pretty sure we've talked about it a little bit ago beforehand. So yeah.
And if this were if I was a good YouTuber, I'd point to the top of the screen and go, "Look there!" But we're not good YouTubers, so we don't have that. But
It's
you can
also
find it.
it's almost like 15 minutes from 1 in the morning. So
Yeah. So yeah. So yeah, but other than that, like I said, the story had a lot writing on it because of the blunder that was Lightfall. I liked it no, I didn't like it narratively. I liked it musically. I liked it in terms of gameplay and design. But again, narratively, we can all agree it really dropped the ball. And again, because of that, if this expansion did not deliver, I could easily see this not ruining Bungie, but certainly like taking
putting a
quite a big
very
chunk out of them.
very fatal nail in the coffin.
Yeah, they were real.
It's not going to be done, but it'd be a very fatal nail.
Yeah, it would be a very fatal nail, especially with how current Sony is supposedly looking at them.
Yeah.
But again, that's drama for another video. But as people often jokingly say, especially now, panicking Bungie is apparently a very good Bungie because they always seem to make their best work when they physically have no other choice.
When they make themselves stressed out with a big crunch line with a whole lot of things and ideas and stuff, and they need to crunch everything together, they do good work.
To be a bit topical, it's kind of like what EA thought BioWare could do, but magic, everybody. um, Jokes aside, like I said, it really delivered. It really hit home, and it really does set up a bunch of interesting plot lines. Did it play out exactly as I thought it would? No, there were some literal story beats that I literally was like, "Oh, I did not expect them to do that," but they did. So we will see. Like I said, I really recommend you actually do play it if you're looking into getting it. Do get it, and especially soon because believe you me, my friend, my brother and sisters in light, this stuff's gonna be all over the internet within a few days, especially come Monday after the new Vidocs.
At the most, give it a week, and everything that's gone on in the campaign up until this point is going to be online. So
Oh yeah,
if you watch Destiny content fairly often and YouTube recommends it, be prepared because it's gonna give it to you.
yeah. I've already seen people giving away like the big grand finale at the very end, which I think that's something you just gotta experience yourself. So to whomever posted that already now, shame on you. Give it at least a few days.
Yeah.
But it's there. And fun fact actually, before we close off, if you are interested in replaying the cutscenes and everything, when you do actually replay the missions, you get all the cutscenes and stuff as well. So we've actually tested that, or I tested that. You do
I
actually get like the full like rendered cutscenes and cinematic and stuff like that when you replay the cinema. So
well,
you
where
actually
is
get the full.
that?
Hmm.
Where is that?
Like if you replay a mission, right?
Right.
Or like remember when we were playing that mission or when I was playing it over again with you?
Hmm. Oh yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
same.
You
Yeah.
see every. Okay, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean now.
Yeah. You get the full experience even if you replay the mission. So even if you miss a cutscene, if you were like during the first day and the okay, let me just I forgot to mention this, but the first day,
Say it for
what
what
the
it
heck
is.
happened? Look, I get it. I get it. Like it's like I get it. Day one is bad. Within the first few hours, like 4 or 5, usually works out. That game, this expansion wrecked the game for 99% of that day, and even a bit into
Yes.
tomorrow, or even a bit
Nobody
into the
could
next
play
day.
it, and if you were playing the campaign, you couldn't start the second mission.
I don't know how. Actually, I do have a few theories because the Pale Heart itself is, fun fact, an entirely single instance based destination. Not only is it a linear destination, it's single instance. So unless you invite someone along with you in the fire team, you're not going to see anybody else in the entire Paleheart alongside you, and that just hammers home how personal this story is supposed to be. Which again, they deliver on. I think it's a perfect ending to 10 years. It really, really is. People who say it's a perfect ending, I totally agree. Not saying you should stop playing, but it is a good ending. to this saga, it's a very perfect ending. I will say that. I legitimately got emotional. And
It
that's not
closes
often.
off the chapter perfectly.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe that's the reason the entire thing had to literally they had to wave reboot their entire servers. Maybe because, like I said, it's single instance and their servers just tried breaking, trying to render 400 million instances at the same time. I don't know. But, yeah. But yeah, other than that, wonderful, great, would recommend, definitely watch. So that brings us to the end of our final shape review. The Witness, I gotta say it, ding dong, the witch is dead. So what comes next? I have no idea. We'll see Monday, I guess. But yeah, unless you have any closing thoughts, Justin, we'll go from here.
It, I want to reference a very specific character that people have been hoping have something happen with them for a while. Can I?
Well, which
Are you okay
character?
with it?
Which character?
Here. I'm gonna type it
I'm
to you.
gonna chat. Oh, you said no spoilers. Don't break the promise.
Well, I know, but
Uh, you know what?
I'm just
Leave
saying.
it. Leave it. You know what? Leave it. Leave it. Make
All
it
right,
intrigue. Make it
suspense.
intrigue. Suspense.
There's suspense, ladies and gentlemen. Something that might pique many of interest.
I will just say it may very well have to do with what's going on in the next season starting Tuesday.
Yes.
I won't
It
say anything more, but if you watch,
it does get referenced. You gotta play the campaign if you want to know what we're talking about, but it gets referenced.
yeah, you gotta play to the very end to see it. But you'll know it if you got a sharp eye and you know a bit of the story. You'll know it. So we'll leave you there, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good one. Enjoy the Pale Heart. I know I am. Who knew Guardian Heaven could look so nice, murdery, and possibly trauma-inducing, depending on where you are. So have a good one, everybody.